John Singer Sargent. This is a very interesting topic in the sense that it's not just about how Sargent painted, but the concepts that Sargent used, such as alla prima. So this is a canvas that is already wet. I use a mixture of anything that can thin the oil paint, like a solvent or whatever, to dilute the paint so that everything is slick and ready to paint wet on wet, also known as alla prima. The colors that I'm using are white, cadmium yellow, cadmium yellow deep. This is cadmium red light, alizarin crimson, ivory black, phthalo blue. I'm not using the same colors that Sargent used, but I'm going to again show you how his type of, let's just call it aesthetic, works. So let's mix the red and the yellow, which will give us an orange. Howling Dog Design, welcome, welcome. This is a live stream, by the way, for anybody that's watching this as a pre-recorded, but I will focus on the topic at hand, so don't worry about it if you missed the stream. So this is a simple mixture of skin tone. This palette, by the way, works for any skin tones, just because this is a Sargent reference that you're seeing up there. It'll work just fine for anything, and you'll see throughout the weeks, months, and years to come. I will continue to use this palette. Alright, so the forehead is somewhere over here. Now, one important thing to note about Sargent is that when he would begin his paintings, say like there's a big, say like El Jaleo, where there's someone dancing and there's things in the background, he would use a charcoal drawing first to just roughly map where things out. So he would probably start a face somewhat like that in charcoal, and you actually see some of his sketches where a face starts out something like this, because to an experienced painter, this is enough to tell you the placement of the head. Hey, Janice. Alright, so anyway, so the top of the head, bottom of the head is going to fit somewhere over there. With this alla prima technique, I prefer to work a little bit warmer, and then I add some cooler colors as I go. Sargent would work with mass, working from general to specific. Quotes of Sargent would be, he would look at the face as a wig maker's block. Eyebrows are somewhere over there. So real quickly, adding some values there. And this is similar to how you would see me paint in, say, a time trial. You know I like my time trials. So now we got the shape of the face. The model that Sargent painted here is highly idealized. I think he was like really good friends with the sitter. I forgot the sitter's name. That's what he would call them, the sitter. And I think he actually asked to paint this. I don't think it was a commission. And you'll notice the difference between Sargent's commissions and his paintings. Chin is going to fit somewhere over here. So like I said, this palette works pretty well with pretty much all skin tones. So just like a sculpture, paint just like a sculpture. It looks just like a wig maker's block or something out of a scary movie. As for my live streams, I've been gone for a while. Just a schedule conflict at home, but should be returning to normal streams around this time most days of the week, minus Friday. I have Zoom students at that time. But anyway, now we have the head blocked in. Wasting no time to cover down towards the neck. You could actually work like this with a soft pastel. I'll actually be teaching a soft pastel class online as per a student's request. Okie dokie, now we got this scary looking thing. Hey Angel, we got this scary looking thing blocked in here now. We can go ahead and start to add some shadows. I like to use red and black for a brown, and I can get whatever variation of brown I want with yellow and blue. So this works quite well for pretty much everything. Now we're locking down a shadow shape. I like to make the shadows a little bit darker as an exaggeration. Sargent would probably work like this, quite loose but very controlled. Sargent studied the classical approach to oil painting, which is do your drawing, careful drawing first, and then fill in the blanks. Yeah. He would work like that as a student, but as a 9-to-5 painter that had to pay his bills, and he did quite well for his time. In fact, however much he made in his time is probably more than I make now. But anyway, he was very procedural with how he worked. He was known to paint things out to the dismay of his sitters, as they were called. Let's add a little bit of pink for the cheeks over here. And Mark L, a little bit of pink for the cheeks. Very Sargent-esque. Now, I can get a really nice greenish color with cadmium yellow and phthalo blue. Nice and simple greenish color. Now, I have a much faster way of working than this. I'm just slowing it down for you so you can see the thought process behind this type of start. It looks intimidating to someone that's maybe not as versed in alla prima, which is all this is. It's just alla prima. If you're not well versed in this, it's going to look a little scary, a little intimidating, but don't worry. If you work with shapes like this, you can put it together, pull it all together into whatever degree of realism that you want. Major planes are very important for the Sargent-esque type work. Oh yeah, he did many studies for his portraits, yeah. He did compositional studies. Like in the beginning when I drew that little oval, that's probably all he would have had. All he would have needed for a face. Just the placement is enough. Now let's consider the 9-to-5 career artist, everyday working painter. Okay? They don't have time to mess around with say Bouguereau. That's different. That's a very careful academic transfer drawing and all that stuff. Sargent, when he was ready to, and I'm not a time traveler, I wasn't there, I'm not claiming to have been there, but I've been painting long enough that from experience I can tell you if Sargent wanted to, he would knock a painting out in perhaps, I don't know, a day or 2 days. He can knock out a painting if he wants to. People like to exaggerate history, as you probably know. People like to exaggerate and say, well, he painted this hand 45 times and then he wiped it out. Sure, he probably did do that once. He didn't do that all the time, I can guarantee you that. If he did, he wouldn't have been as successful as he was. Now his stylizations, and this is what he's most famous for these days, unfortunately. He should be famous for his planes. He should be famous for his technical work, not so much for his brushy work, which is what we're definitely exaggerating with this start right now. But anyway, he had a name brand even back in his day. He knew that people wanted that loose, kind of fresh style because it's not something that people had the audacity to do. Portrait artists did not have the audacity to do that. Back in the day, you'd be ridiculed if you left something unfinished, especially the hands that Sargent painted. You can tell he didn't really like hands that much. I mean, he did well. He did exceptionally well with hands. But he would use his stylization type thing to leave it be just a few brush strokes, which is not easy to do. I'm not claiming it's easy to do, but Sargent, the painter of his caliber, well, he could have done a lot more, but he didn't for the stylization purposes. You see there's a plane that I added there. Now, once again, if I were painting as normal, I would have already went into more specifics. But I'm slowing it down so you can see what I'm doing here. So now the background. I know Sargent would not hesitate to start to put things into the background. So we're going to go right into that. I'm slowing down the pace of which I'm working. Please feel free to paint along with me, whether you're watching this as a pre-recorded or watching this live. Wasn't much of a announcement prior to this stream. I apologize for that. I've been away for some time. But I want to, return to business as usual pretty soon. Now we're pushing that shadow. Once again, let's talk more about Sargent because I have a lot of knowledge of Sargent, and not to say I'm like a art history expert when it comes to painters like Sargent, but he was not quote unquote an American artist, as people will say. John Singer Sargent, American, in the museums. Obviously, much to the controversy of the times, what is American? Well, whatever. It means whatever people want it to mean. We know that the true Americans are the Native Americans. But anyway, Sargent was trained in France, Italy. Basically, he is a European artist. Sargent is a European artist. That is where he was trained. He left and moved to Boston, Massachusetts, where he continued most of his career, mainly because he didn't have that much competition in America. There weren't as many high-level painters. There were some, but there weren't as many as in Europe. Sargent at his time, well, he did pretty well. He painted the Rockefellers. He painted Teddy Roosevelt. Everyone liked that style, that fresh style. But did Sargent? Not really. He didn't love it per se, as you would think. He loved painting, yes, but he did not so much enjoy painting the elite, the one percenters, basically, in our time. I wouldn't either. I wouldn't like that to be my career either. I love this. to be able to paint online and, you know, share the knowledge with everyone. That's my calling. Sargent wasn't as happy with his painting the elite. In fact, there's a record of him saying that he was done with the high social class paintings or something like that. And you can get all this information from documentaries online or just written accounts. I've been painting for so long that I just remember all this stuff that was presented to me a long time ago. But he was fed up with it. He didn't like it. Maybe the sitters were too snobby. We all know what it's like to be in an area where there's all these rich people that, you know, feel like they own the world, and even if they do, we don't want to just suck up to them, right? Sargent, he definitely had to deal with that. And then think about his painting titled Gassed, World War I painting. If you look closely, again, the faces are pretty much kind of like this. Maybe a few little things for the features of the face, right? Little accents like that. And some of the faces in the distance kind of are simplified like that. You see these little brush strokes. See how simple it is to start to put in the illusion of that? Hey Curtis, thanks for joining. Isa Joyce, New Brooklyn, Alabama. You know, it's all about what pays the bills for Sargent. And I'd hate to say it, but Sargent painted the way he did because he knew that it was highly profitable. From the age of 22, he already had, I think it was called the, dang it, I forgot the name of the painting, but there's a painting of people gathering together, or like at a beach. I totally forgot the name of that painting, but just look up Sargent painting in a, with, I think it's the Oyster Gatherers. I think that's the name of that painting, if I'm not mistaken. I'm probably mistaken. I don't know. It's been like 20 years now since I first heard that, the Oyster Gatherers. And then think about his famous painting of see, I forgot the name of the people, but it's the square composition with the three daughters. I think, yeah, three daughters. Just look up Sargent painting of three daughters. Back in the day, even that, he painted that at a really young age as well. That was referred to as four corners and a void in a pejorative way. Alright, now we can start to get into some specifics. As scary as this looks, again, Sargent, knowing it's about paying the bills, this is a more efficient way to work. Sargent says, alright, let me get down to business and apply the form onto the face. Sargent wouldn't just sit around and spend like an entire day rendering something. He would very much go right into big shapes like this, standing from a distance. Sargent was known for wearing out the carpet in his studio from standing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, moving around in a rapid pace. Again, exaggerations in history. People would say that he would be cursing demons or something like that, as he would stand back and, you know, be all frustrated. And look, people like to romanticize artists. We get a lot of stuff from non-artists. People love to exaggerate things, like, and I'm pretty sure that was the case with Sargent as well. He was a regular painter like all of us. He painted and he drew just as precisely as, say, Sir Joshua Reynolds, or maybe not to a Bouguereau level. Though Bouguereau was really good at rendering, I wouldn't say he was much of a painter's painter. But, you know, Sargent, if he wanted to, he could make something look like a very young Rembrandt painting, if he wanted to. But he chose to create this look. Now there's a myth, and I'm going to tell you it's definitely a myth. I've been painting long enough, and a lot of people have told you this, that Sargent went to great detail to make his paintings. And by great detail, I mean he put in a lot of effort to make his paintings look effortless. And that's false. I'm going to tell you that that's false because as someone who's been painting such a long time now, I'm going to tell you it's not true. Sargent stood back, painted as he normally would, and when the job was done, or when Sargent felt like he could present the work to his client and the client approved, he would move on. I can tell you this because I've been doing commissions as well. Recently I've been doing a lot of commissions, so I know that feeling of like, okay, alright, now I can say the painting is well enough to present. Trust me, if you're a career artist, you're not going to be going that extra mile for every single client. Think about a mechanic. Is an auto mechanic going to go that extra mile to make sure that every single bolt is up to torque specifications? No. They're going to make sure that the car does not fall apart because they don't want to get sued, but they are going to do what they got to do to move on to the next job. Same thing with a career artist. Same exact thing. You gotta make a living. Times are tough. Even now, times are perhaps tougher for artists than they were back then, except now we have YouTube, so that's a good thing. Though that seems to be changing a lot these days. Now we're entering a stage in the painting where Sargent, depending on how he felt, I'm sure, I mean I wasn't there, but I've been painting long enough, I can tell you from someone of my experience level, would take a break here and Sargent would go get a cup of coffee or something like that and come back and start to put in more specifics. Now Sargent, I would always refer to him as a trickster because the refinement that you see in his paintings is not obvious as it is with say Bouguereau or a young Rembrandt. Think about all of the myths that you know from what people say in anything, in a sport, any sport or profession that you do. Painting is no different. There are tons of myths out there. And if you work with these big shapes harmoniously, moving from one to another, not worrying about, you know, what people think of you or think of the painting, whether the forehead is too tall or the eyes are too droopy or anything like that. You can, you know, not think about that. That's a good thing. Portrait painters in the past actually had something to divide the sitter's eyes from the canvas, or sometimes they would do the opposite. They'd have a mirror so that the sitter could see what they're doing. It's all about having a good process, happy clients, word of mouth spreads. It's all business. Even though it is a fine art, It's all business. Now we're going to go into the middle values, which will start to add form. Always remember that likeness is nothing more than the validation of an accurate drawing. An accurate drawing is nothing more than proper placement of light and shadow. Using these big planes is a way to draw, is a way to see light and shadow without having to carefully draw. Now, let me tell you another thing that I consider to be a myth. So the academic drawing, and it's great to introduce to students because, I introduce my students to the classical, the academic approach to painting because it involves a series of self-checking steps, but it's really inefficient for a career artist. A career artist is going to choose alla prima 10 out of 10 unless they're very fixated on a marble polished kind of finish like Bugara. Okay, so listen to me carefully if you can. The classical approach to oil painting, where you do an underpainting, a transfer drawing, follow all those steps, saying that is one of the ultimate ways to paint, and this is all subjective when I say ultimate, but it's also false. So the point of the classical approach was so that the old masters would have their apprentices do their work for them. And then if they approved the painting, then they would sign it. So for example, you would have your beginning students do the outlines. You do not want your beginning apprentices going alla prima on a painting because it's difficult and they're going to ruin it and it's going to be tougher to correct. A beginning student would do the outlines, and then once the outlines are good, they would be transferred, and now a more advanced student or a beginning student would just fill in the light and shadows, also known as the cartoon. More advanced students would start to put in values. The most advanced students would put in color and tonality. Those are your most advanced apprentices. And your apprentices that just failed to learn anything would be the ones making the paint. And if they couldn't even do that, then the apprentice would probably just fire them. I can tell you what colors I'm using. This is titanium white, cadmium yellow deep, cadmium red light, alizarin crimson, ivory black, and phthalo blue. So I'm telling you that the classical approach to creating a painting is not the most efficient way to work. It's the most aesthetically appealing way. It's the most marketable way to work. How great is it when every step looks so pristine, so divine, that your model doesn't have a lazy eye in the beginning or something looking off. You see, it's a great way to spend a lot longer than you have to on your painting, following the techniques that were invented by the old masters so that they can have their apprentices create paintings for them. And what a great setup that was. The old masters and their apprentices. Think about it. The old master would just have to sign the painting and say, well, I approve what you've done. Congratulations, apprentice. You have made money for me, but also you have learned some skills in the trade. What a great system that was. What an excellent system that was. One thing I'm going to do, notice that I titled this painting, How to Oil Paint Like John Singer Sargent. One is that I'm going to change art history a little bit by painting people of darker skin color as if I was John Singer Sargent, painting people of different ethnicities as if I was John Singer Sargent, because that is one of my biggest problems with art history. Is it's pretty much all the same ethnicity type person, if you know what I mean. That's the single most annoying thing about art history, is Rembrandt, Sargent, Bouguereau, everyone painted the same skin complexion, the same ethnicity, the same look. And that's just, history repeats itself way too much, and I hate that. I hate it. Ignorance is what creates the repetition of bad habits, bad things in history. It's just dumb, for lack of better words. I will do Sargent titled paintings, but I will be painting people of different ethnicities, different skin colors. Variety is the spice of life. Education is what prevents us from doing the same garbage that humanity did in the past. And education is the way to move forward, not through repeating what things were done in the past just because you call it heritage. Doesn't make it right. Thank you, Androm Pet. Thank you. Glad you liked the video. Okay, so let's get into some subtlety now of the form. First thing I'm going to do is go into the background. Education is key to move us forward in life. And if you did not know that the classical approach to oil painting is more of what the old masters used for apprentices to create work for them, now you know. You've got a whole group of people trying to rediscover the methods of the old masters. Like it was some big secret. It's not. It's light and shadow, proper drawing, anatomy, composition. Get on with it. It's the same stuff. It's always been the same stuff, and there's no mystery to it. There shouldn't be any mystery to it. None whatsoever. So, shape of the head. Again, that's going to be a big deal. And remember, like I said, likeness is nothing more than the confirmation of an accurate drawing. I could care less. I could really not care about the likeness, because what matters is not the likeness, unless you are held at gunpoint by someone that says the likeness needs to be absolutely spot on, or else I'm going to fill your body up with lead. Don't worry about it. Too many painters, too many drafts people go crazy over the likeness. If you really want the likeness, stop wasting your time. Get out a projector and trace the light and shadow. Believe me, it's going to save you a lot of time. Nobody is going to go to such an extent 100 years from now to verify that the nose is in the exact same place on your painting as it was on the model. And I actually created a video on how to paint a portrait from imagination. I have not uploaded it yet. I will upload it soon. I just wanted to do this stream first because I just felt like it. Now, you can start a painting any which way you want. All techniques meet somewhere in the middle, and that is the middle stages. So I could have started this painting with a very careful drawing. and I could have went in and filled in the light and shadow. That's fine. Like I said, that classical approach, that's fine. You can do that. But remember, what it was originally designed for, and what it does, what it's best at, is fact checking every stage, having accountability for every stage. But you don't want to work like that all your career if you can avoid it. You want to have the guts, you want to have the courage to work with paint as it is. Too many people are way too caught up on things such as fat over lean, or what are the number one biggest mistakes that beginner painters make, or anything like that. No one cares. I mean, the biggest mistake that oil painters make is not painting. That's it. That's the biggest mistake you're gonna make, is not painting. Go out there and make big mistakes. Go out there and, make a fool of yourself in an art class if you have to. Be bold. The biggest mistake you can do is just not to paint. Because the experience is enough to teach you the things that you don't want to do. Now you see how we're building these planes? When I was a kid and I started painting, Sargent was my superhero. I looked up to him so much, and I really bought into the lies that Sargent worked extra hard to make his paintings look fresh. I bought into that. I really did. Because that's what everyone told me. And then I just had more experience painting. I had more experience doing commissions, paintings where I really need to get it right or else I'm not getting paid. And then, after all these years, I realized Sargent wasn't just putting on a facade, trying to dress up the painting so that it looked like he painted it that way. He really did paint it that way. He just stood further back than most of us. He simplified more than most of us. We can say he may have oversimplified certain things. And we all make mistakes. Sargent was not immune to mistakes. Sargent's biggest flaw, I will tell you, is hands. I can tell you that Sargent's biggest flaw is hands because they're always elongated. They're always awkwardly placed. The arms are always a little bit too long relative to a standard human. And that's okay. He's still a legend. He's still a legend. Hey, Carly. Thank you. Glad you liked the information. Here's another myth, everybody. We're getting into myths, but at the same time, we're focusing on painting like Sargent. Here's another myth. You need to have a lot of colors in order to create color harmony. It's not the biggest myth out there, but the school that I was taught at in Philly a long time ago, they used, I don't really know what they're doing these days, but a 22 color palette. You've seen me do that before. You've seen me have a lot of colors on the palette. And the real answer is what works best for you is what works best. For me, it just so happens that this 6 color palette is what works best for me. But I will say that this palette is simple, it's cost efficient, and it really does make the process a little bit easier. The important thing is your cadmium yellow and your cadmium red. Cadmium red light is good because it's not as blue as cadmium red medium. And the same is true for almost any brand. But these brands are all mostly Winsor Newton. I have a student grade black. This is Artist Loft. There's another myth for you. You must have all artist grade colors. Well, that's just not true. If you know how to mix your colors, you can paint with student grade if you want to. Who cares? Is somebody going to go and check that your oil painting was done with artist grade? No. Don't fall into those gimmicks. Winsor Newton or Gamblin does the job just fine. More expensive paints have higher pigment to oil ratios, meaning there's more pigment in it, and it feels different. So if the feel of those paints is what you like, then it's worth the money. John Singer Sargent would work extensively with limited palette type skin tones. Limited palette. So Sargent would probably use something similar to this, or something like the Zorn palette. But don't let the color be such a mystery. And like I said, we're going to paint different skin tones, different ethnicities, different tonalities with this palette. It does just fine. And remember, if you want to paint like Sargent, you're going to be painting just like Rembrandt. You'll be painting just like Peter Paul Rubens. You'll be painting just like any academic painter in history. But we're going to focus on Sargent because of the aesthetic, and frankly, he has a bigger following than the others on YouTube right now. Because you boys got to make a living. Hey, Pissarro. Thank you, thank you. I'm glad you liked the technique. Very simple. Sargent himself would have probably been at this level already if he was working from this. I mean, you know, if you could go back in time and see how he painted as he was painting, he'd probably already be at this level of form. Sargent was not too keen on highlights everywhere. I think he was a little bit critical about them too. I think he called them false highlights. Planes is where you're going to learn from Sargent, not the brush strokes. Forget about the brush strokes. The brush stroke is akin to the font on a computer. A brush stroke is nothing more than the calligraphy, but the message is more important than the calligraphy. Follow these techniques and you too will be able to paint like Mr. Sargent. Now this is a lot to do in a 1 hour time frame, which is all I'm giving myself is an hour with this. But I believe that the painting should be fun. It should be enjoyable. It should be practical, to some sense. Think about this. Everyone that's listening, you're gonna make money with your art. Sure, do it because you like it. Do it because you love it. But you will make money if you focus on learning, if you focus on values and colors, and if you focus on this kind of stuff, people will want to buy your paintings. Whether it be friends, family, loved ones, people in your pool hall, I don't know, people that your co-workers, when they see what you're able to paint. The money takes care of itself, kind of like an athlete that trains hard. The winning takes care of itself. The athlete is not going to go and show up to the tournament and say, what can I do to win this? The athlete is going to show up to a tournament and focus on everything they do in practice. And the winning takes care of itself. Sargent focused on his knowledge of color, values, anatomy, and he got paid quite well for it. So the money took care of itself. So don't be afraid of making money with your work, because you can. Thanks, Pissarro. Yeah, the Impressionists had, kind of a looseness about them, and Sargent was a contemporary of Claude Monet. Monet was all about the monies, but not just that. Monet also was a great salesperson, in the sense that he was able to convince people that, that type of expressive look to a painting was something worth buying into. And believe me, true Impressionism is not what it seems. True Impressionism is the use of color and light in a painting. You can have the most detailed painting in the world, and it still is a wonderful example of Impressionism, because Impressionism is about using color to portray the sense of light. And it happens really well with oil paint. Unfortunately, with some materials like, I'm not going to hate on acrylic, but with acrylic it's a little bit harder. It's possible, yes, but it's a little bit harder, because as the paints dry too quickly, sometimes that luminosity can get lost. But it's possible. You can do anything you do with oil paint, you can do with acrylic, aesthetic wise. You can also do a really good job with pastel. It is alright. Yeah, the neck can move a little bit that way. And eyebrow to the right. Yeah, that can move as well. Of course. And that's why I always say keep your shapes simple and easy, such that when the time comes to make changes, those changes are simple and easy to manage. John Singer Sargent dealt with this all the time. He has a quote, a famous quote, every time I paint a portrait, I lose a friend. He also said, a portrait is a painting in which there's a little something wrong with the mouth. The mouth almost always gets moved, and you can see Sargent really doesn't put a lot for lips, and that's excellent. A lot of detail on the lips is a problem if your model or your sitter wants you to move something. If you look at some Sargent paintings up close, you can actually see some paintings underneath of them. He really did work that tirelessly. As does this canvas have many paintings underneath of it. The painting that you'll see, the painting video that I've recorded for you about how to paint from imagination, it's about a 30-minute video. You'll see it maybe tomorrow or I don't know, Friday, I don't know. But anyway, that painting was done on this canvas, and I already painted over it. Now she has this necklace on, and you can just suggest it. Jewelry is really useful when painting a portrait because it gives a sense of almost like a frame, what a frame does to a painting. Jewelry does to a portrait almost what a frame does to a painting. And we'll throw in this red, whatever this is, a little bit higher up, maybe to about there. Obviously not the same as the original, but that's kind of the point. I'm showing you the process. See how you can work from the inside out? Yeah, see how I'm adjusting the shape for the face? And the eyebrow to the right. Okay. So eyebrow's a little too close. Now these are the challenges involved in portrait painting that can be made much easier if you paint similar to Sargent. Keep your shapes simple and easy, such that when the time comes to make changes, those changes are simple and easy to manage. And you can work on the same planes. Say you have 15 planes on the face, and you can maneuver those 15 planes for hours without adding extra detail if your goal is to achieve more of a likeness. And that's totally fine. These are things you need to know. These are very important things to consider. It's not about the quantity, but the quality of your planes. And it's not going to be done first try. The only reason I can paint this quickly in 1 hour is because I've been doing it pretty much all my life. And I've been doing YouTube for years and years and years. Since 2017. I've been here for a while, and I hope to remain doing this type of work my entire life. I may be away sometimes. I try to make money in different ways now, because YouTube is not what it used to be. So I try to make money in some pool tournaments or dog walking. Um, but I always hope to remain here. Yeah, we soften that edge. Sargent was really, really good at softening edges, as you can see if you look at the close-up. Watch this. We'll do the same exact thing as Sargent. Drag it right into the shadow, and we've created pretty much the same edge that Sargent created there. The rest is just drawing. Just pushing these, say, 15 or 20 planes to one side or to another side. Nonetheless, the rest is just pushing these shapes around. But it is not worth the time to me to do that. Rather, I'd rather show you an imperfect painting with perfect explanation than show you a perfect painting with imperfect explanation. For my priority is your experience. What you get out of this is my priority. I'm not here to show off. I'm not here to sell anything to you, although if you want to take my online classes, links are in the description box below. But anyway, I'm here to help you add something positive to the world. Now obviously that shoulder should go a little bit further out that way, but I painted it that way so you could see some of the dress. So now we have our guitar pick shaped head. Simplicity in the lights. You'll see that a lot in Sargent paintings. Nice and easy. And it really was astonishing back in the day that Sargent could kind of get away with this. The lack of detail in his paintings was very much intentional. Sargent could, if he had to, paint like Bouguereau or something close to that. But this is what worked for him. And this is why alla prima is so useful right now. So I can soften all these things. And we got about a minute, 2 minutes left. Nice and simple. And if we're doing a Sargent style painting, obviously the highlights in the eyes are last. There you go. That's how you do a Sargent style painting. Like I said, I'd rather show you an imperfect painting with perfect explanation than a perfect painting with imperfect explanation. I'm not here to show off. I'm here to create content that will make your life better in some way. Once again, remember that painting like Sargent is the same as painting like Rembrandt or painting like Caravaggio or any other academic artist in art history. It's all about the fundamentals, big shapes, values, light and shadow. And remember, likeness is nothing more than the confirmation of an accurate drawing. Accurate drawing just requires light and shadow primarily to be correct. This could have gone further. I could have pushed this exactly like the original, but that is not the intent with these types of videos. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for all the likes that you have left on the video. Once again, I am back to my working hours with YouTube. I took a break to do some commission work and just some other work, but now we're back to YouTube. So if you have been watching this channel for a while, you know what to do. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe and turn on your notifications so you are notified whenever I go live. Brushes are going back in the container. And that's all I got for you. Thank you so much for watching. I wish you the very best, and I'll see you next time.